Hey everyone, so this is a bit of a different video for my channel. Normally my channel, it's focused on some ADVOU content or even just like, messing around with my friends, of course. Y'all know about all that. Today we have a bit more of a serious video. It's not really typical for me to be like a serious like interviewer type, but recently one of my good friends did something incredible. He actually won Jirachi's DPP Invitational. The first ever was taken by none other than my good friend Pideous here. Introduce yourself.
Hello, yeah, I am him, and we'll just be going over some of the games and stuff.
You are him. This is actually certain. You are certainly him. So, yeah, so here's what we have for you today. We have 6 replays that Finn picked out that kind of he believes are kind of indicative of his tournament run. We're going to talk about some of his prep process. We're going to talk about some of the teams he used. Should be a good video. Should be way more informative than the content I usually make, too. So, this is probably going to be...
I feel like innovating ADV, has its own merits, right?
Okay, that is true. That is true. Or watching Juster fuck up at Mario Bros. 3. Those are both very exciting.
That's very important content.
That's very important content. It's true. All right. So with that being said, so your first set of the tournament, you had a very long, exciting tournament run through winners. Your first set of the tournament was one that, if I remember correctly, you were like very nervous about, right? You had a very strong opponent. You had to play McMegan in your first round.
Yeah. Round 1, I had to play against McMegan, which a bit scary.
Yes, that is a name.
I'm not really.
That is like a brand name like Smogon player. If you hear McMegan as your opponent, no matter the tier, you're gonna be like, uh-oh.
Yeah, and I hadn't really had any experience in, well, like any tournament that I guess had stakes on the line. Like I'd never played an SBL or like any playoffs for a big tournament, so it was a big thing for me to try and win that game.
So
and it was a very close series as well.
Yes. I remember the game that you remember from this series is probably game 2. Game 2 was
very long.
It was very long, but it was a very interesting game because basically, if you're an idiot like me, you thought Finn lost, and then he revealed CM Lottie. But if you're smart like everyone else, you knew he had CM Lottie the whole time, and he was just scouting the last to make sure it wasn't something that beat it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, basically, the moral of that story is Big Will is not very smart. But
yeah, it was basically a Stolmer where I just had a really good matchup. But we're not going to look at that game because it's very long and basically just comes down to matchup.
Yes, the team will come up again later because Finn is a reusing piece of shit. But the team is very interesting in its own right in terms of as far as DPP goes anyway, at least to me. So we're gonna get into this first game here. We have you can see this.
So we're gonna talk a little bit about
our
prep and stuff for each of the games, right?
Oh yeah, of course. So going into the Roro series, like what were you thinking? And first of all, what's like your general process for prepping for things? Do you try to like, are you like a meta trend follower? Are you like a personal like trend follower? Like what do you try to do?
Generally, I just try to be as on top of the meta as I can as far as like what I think is actually good and effective and consistent. And sometimes I'm right with that, sometimes I'm wrong with that. But generally, I don't try to tech too much for a specific opponent, or at least I don't try to tend to stray too far away from my comfort zone just for a specific opponent.
And those who know Finn playing DPP know he has a comfort zone, and it's very very clear what that comfort zone is.
Yeah, I brought a lot of Relum and a lot of Heatran this tournament.
Yes, those are his boys right there, Breloom and Heatran. Anyway, so I'm gonna show, this is the team that he used for the game we're about to watch. Do you have any like what kind of insight?
You've switched to the replay away from the team.
No, it's what's showing on the screen is on the right.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I see.
So yeah, so you can see like on OBS, it says preview over here and it says program over here. So it's what's showing on the screen is actually that's actually on the right. So
okay.
Yeah, the left window's there just so I can mess with stuff while having something still on the right side, so I'm not like live editing basically. But
cool.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, the team. I mean, I built all my teams for McMegan before I knew my opponent was McMegan. Like I was very excited for this tournament, so I built all my teams and I was like, all right, these are the 3 teams I'm bringing week 1. And I was pretty set on that. And when I found out my opponent was McMegan, I was like, he's probably going to bring bulkier stuff. But I felt fairly confident that I'd have a decent matchup with my teams. And then game 1 happened, and it was like a very tough game. He had like Nidoqueen, and I had like T-Turn Infernape offense with Zapdos.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very tough, and I blew up my Heatran really early. So his Jirachi was a big threat, and then ended up
Yes.
losing that game.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, maybe this was a bad call. And then game two was a really long, grindy matchup, but I had a bit of an edge. I came out on top, and so coming into game three, it's been a pretty long series, and I'm loading another offensive team, and so that's basically the stage is set, I think.
Yeah, and this isn't anything really that crazy. The team itself, there's a couple specific choices you wanted to mention though.
Right, it's a max speed T-Tar, which came in a bit relevant here, and
Mm-hmm.
what was the other thing? It was the Shuka 4-attacks Metagross, right, with
Yes.
the
Mm-hmm.
Thunder Punch,
Yeah.
as opposed to, I think a lot of people during the game thought it would be Agility, or Scarfed, but
Yes.
I ended up just deciding that having the coverage, but also the not having to be locked into anything would be best.
Yeah, and other than that, it's just a very standard like Azelf Infernape type 6.
Yeah, I mean,
Starflati Sutar supporting it makes a whole lot of sense. Like,
Metagross Gyarados T-Tar is just like one of the best offensive cores
yeah,
in the tier.
that's also true. Yep. If you want
It's
these three
very
guys,
straightforward.
these three guys are best friends. But
Mhm.
we will let's get into the game now. So, starting from turn 1 here, we see McMegan leading with Gyarados. So, Gyarados as it's kind of a weird lead. So what was going through your head here? Did you consider like taunting it on DD at all, or did you just think I'm just gonna get my rocks and get out?
Well, I don't get +1 waterfall, so
Sure. Okay.
as long as he wasn't like sub TD, then there wasn't much downside to just getting up rocks and then blowing up.
Okay.
That was my thought process basically.
Okay. Yep.
And
So
he reveals
these.
immediately to be CB.
Okay. Yep. So yeah. Okay, and then the switch to Tar makes a lot of sense from Roro. You know, it just dies at end of turn. T-Wave is kind of
Yeah.
nice though.
T-Waving this is pretty good. I kind of expected like a Ghost or a Steel or something to come in to absorb the boom. But T-Tar makes a bit more sense, of course, because it just immediately kills the Azelf. So I'm okay with paralyzing that.
Yep. And by turn 4, we can see already basically that Muro's also using something pretty offensive based on these three revealed, right? There's probably like what, a Breloom, Latias, and something else in the back.
Well, there
Second
is one
steel
team
type,
that comes to
probably.
mind. There's this one public team, I think SFG and maybe Jirachi, I think made. I don't remember about that entirely, but it had CB Gyarados, I think was the lead, and had like a bulky Rocks Tar with Scarf Rotom, I believe Breloom, T-Tar Rotom. No, not Breloom. Superachi Rotom. I don't remember exactly, but I had that team kind of in my mind when I saw the
Sure.
CB Tar lead. Sorry, the CB Gyara lead and the T-Tar.
Sure. I think Super actually makes sense here. I could see that. So, all right.
I guess turn 4 is I mash immediately. I probably should have just Earthquaked, because realistically, he's not going to sack his Tar for nothing. And if he goes Gyarados, it's fine. I'm not actually choice locked, and I'm immune to Intimidate, and I'm Shuckberry.
Yeah.
So CB Earthquake isn't killing me. I can just Thunder Punch and take out his Gyarados,
Yeah.
which would be really good for me.
I mean, I feel like that sequence is still all right. It's just not as aggressively played maybe as it could have been. But
It's okay. It was just
yeah.
a bit cautious. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I understand wanting to be a little cautious after this long of a series. You're in game 3 against a player you massively respect and are like not favored to win against, right?
Right.
So I can understand wanting to be a little cautious in that stance. So
But it's all right because it kind of bluffs Scarf, which is
Yeah.
is nice, I guess.
So
a little bit anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you immediately on turn.
Because you'd expect
7,
maybe Trick if it was an Iron Ball to come out there.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, I feel like on turn 7, like revealing not Scarf is fine. Picking off Tar is probably quite good, I'd imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
That way you don't ever have to worry about switching Latian on anything. Besides, like,
yeah, that's nice.
Besides, like CB Gira, like Ice Fang or something, but you can use Lati a lot more freely to like healing wish something back up later.
Mm-hmm. He gets T-Train in after that, and I just take the chip on my Gyarados, so it's pretty weakened. And I waterfall his Gyarados. I think it's a speed tie there. I assume we're both max speed adamant.
Looks
and
like
I lose
yeah.
this speed tie.
You lost,
which means it's a double down.
Yeah.
But that's okay because I get Breloom in or Infernape in on the Breloom on the double down.
Yes. I mean,
And so as I said, I was kind of expecting Rotom, so I figured his fighting resist probably wouldn't resist fire.
sure.
He's already revealed, Heatran, T-Tar, and Gyarados, so I thought clicking a fire move would be pretty good here. But he actually goes Suicune instead.
Yeah, I Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's still like fine. You still chipped it. There's still sand and rocks up, so Suicunes are not gonna do much. You still have a full health Lottie in the back, so I'd say you're still pretty ahead at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty even. I get a nice U-turn off on the Suicune into the Latias, so it's a bit more
Oops.
chipped. I'm not sure entirely if
I
we're
fucked up.
watching at the same pace, by the way, because when I'm watching your stream, I can't actually see the replay.
Oh,
So I'm
word.
just watching the replay on my own.
I see. Sure.
Um,
Yeah. So I'm on. You turned on turn 12 is where I'm at.
yeah, and then I doubled from the Lati into the Infernape, reason being I figured its Steel type would come out here because you're not just going to sack your Suicune to a T-Bolt or a
Yeah,
Draco
that
Meteor
makes
or whatever.
sense. Scizor.
Maybe
Okay.
Heatran or maybe his unrevealed last. He goes Scizor, and I'm like, oh well, okay. I actually live CB Bullet Punch. That's a favorable situation for me. I can probably just click a fire move because if he goes into his Suicune or his Heatran, I can click a fighting move to follow up, and then I can
Yeah.
probably Healing Wish this up later. Die to quick attack. Crit didn't matter. It was CB quick
Yeah.
attack.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
The
All
only thing
right.
the crit did, it means it wasn't 100% revealed that it was CB, but like
Yeah.
it wasn't going to be non-life orb CB.
And I think
Yeah.
with the CB quick attack reveal, I think you've gone from a position where Infernape looks like it's gonna like take at least a couple more kills and clean the game up to the point where it's like
It's dead.
it's dead, and now it's like, ooh, like how do you actually deal with this? Like, how do you actually like deal with everything Roro has? I feel
Everything.
like at
Yeah.
this, it's not like one Pokemon. It's like the fact that he has all of them. You know what I mean?
It's tough. There's an argument to be made that Latias should have, instead of doubling, just healing wished up, and then because I could have got Infernape back to full. And there's also a team building consideration of should it even be Life Orb, or is it getting worn down too quickly? But regardless of those things, the point is at this point I've got Metagross in, CB locked, Quick Attack Scizor. He's kind of got an option of what he wants to go into. He ends up going into Suicune, and if I Thunder Punched immediately, it would have just died. But instead I Meteor Mash, fearing the Breloom to come in, and you'll see why I was scared of Breloom coming in. But
Yeah.
this means that he has an opportunity to chip me with Surf, or to rest and then try and get a Surf. Well, resting here means he's not guaranteed to get a Surf, but it means that if I switch, then at least he gets something out of his Suicune. However, he rests and doesn't pull any Surfs, which is really good for me.
Yeah. So at this
As
point,
I just Thunder Punch it.
yeah, I mean, keeping all this health on your meta is super nice for dealing with the two strong physical attackers in the back left.
This is especially because Bullet Punch, my last is Tito, right, at this point. Bullet Punch is going to kill me if I don't have Metagross healthy.
Oh, turn on Wake. I see.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I ended up staying in on the Breloom to Meteor Mash it, thinking, well, okay, if he superpowers, that's not too bad, because I've always got Healing Wish for this and then Tar for Tran. So as long as I can take out Breloom, I'm actually in an okay spot. However, he's got Substitute.
Yeah.
It was a bit risky to stay, and I probably should have just gone immediately to Latias, but having at least gotten the turn 1 wake up and revealed that it is sub, I can then take the sleep and then sack Lati. I hit 2 Dracos, which is really important, because if I don't, I just lose.
Yeah.
And then I can send out Tar, knowing that he doesn't have Mac Punch, because he's not going to be sub-focus Mac, he's going to be Seed Bomb.
Yeah, okay.
He's in superpower range, so I can just go for that, which can't miss and doesn't reveal Fire Blast. And so then we end up at the turn, which basically just decides the rest of the game, right? Because he can Bullet Punch here, but if he Bullet Punches as I go Metagross, he doesn't actually have a great play in the follow-up. He can either stay in to click Bullet Punch again, which covers a double, but if I wake up, then he's just going to lose a bunch of health in his Scizor, and then he's going to, have to bring out his Heatran at some point, which we'll lose to Tar if it comes out after Scizor is dead, and we'll die if it comes out on Earthquake. So that's bad for him. As is Bullet Punching and then doubling into the... or switching into the Heatran, hoping it doesn't wake up. Either I can wake up, or I can double into my T-Tar, and then, potentially just get a kill.
Yeah,
in that position.
We've kind of reached an endgame where it's a bunch of like 50-50 type plays, like not exactly 50-50s, but like
Some of them are a bit skewed, but there's a lot of mind games.
It's one of those end games where it's like whoever gets the mind games right will win. And so
there is one thing to note though, is that it's not actually revealed what my T-Tar is. I'm faster and Fire Blast. He doesn't necessarily know that. I mean, maybe his Scizor is slower than his Breloom, in which case he does know that I'm faster. But I'm not revealed Fire Blast.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to assume that with these 3 meta moves revealed, you have some speed invest too, right? So you you only have a little bit of creep, right? And meta didn't really like get hit, so Roro doesn't know if it's, especially if Roro's like Jolly Breloom, like Roro doesn't know if it's fast or not. And so that could also mean
He's more tempted to go for like a U-turn or a superpower
Yeah,
because then he
so
can just bring in his Heatran and win.
he'd probably guess out of Meta and T-Tar, Meta is the one that is fast and T-Tar is the one that is slow. And look at turn 26.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
This is great. We like this.
Yeah, we love this actually. And Heatran not gonna do nearly enough, and Superpower gonna take it out from 50. Crit might have mattered, but it doesn't really. Like,
No, it didn't matter.
So.
It would have. I'm pretty sure it would have died, but I wouldn't have died to the next Earth power regardless. But yeah, now this was. I was very excited after this game.
I remember being in call with you immediately after this, and you were like, "Dude, I just fucking beat Roro. Holy shit!"
Yeah, because this was the first game of the tournament, the first set of the tournament, and I'd managed to survive a very close best of 3 against one of the best players ever. So.
Yeah, I mean, even considering
I don't really
that,
think there's much else to say about it. I was just very excited.
Yeah, I mean, even considering that, like, you're more of a DPP mainer, like, than he is, Roro is still, like, a fantastic player. And so a win of this caliber to start the tournament, like, that's got to feel amazing, right?
Also, again, pretty lucky with the early wakes and not missing any moves. That's the unfortunator right there. But he didn't pull any surfs from his rest stocking Suicune,
Yeah.
I kind of unfortunated him, if anything.
A little bit, yeah. Yes. So, immediately after beating Roro, Finn, he's still in winners. He's still at the stage of the tournament where he has to play in winners 2 weeks in a row. And
but I do jump into the builder because I'm like, maybe I should make some new teams.
Yes. And did you wait for you to know your opponent this time or no?
I did actually, because I think I played versus Roro pretty late in the week. Anyway.
Okay, sure. So Finn got to know his opponent pretty quickly then, is what I'm hearing. So he immediately gets another very tough draw. Someone who is a very notable DPP mainer, played in like many SPLs, done well in a whole lot of DPP tournaments. He immediately
classic playoffs. It's not controversial to actually say that she's the best DPP player right now.
Yeah, he immediately pulls Crystal in round 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Round 2 Crystal.
Crystal, speaking of which, shout outs to Crystal. Crystal is in CI main event, which starts like next week, so that's pretty cool. But
also, I guess to spoil this set, I do win this set, and then she goes undefeated until fighting BKC and loses bracket, which is
she went on
the third place match.
Yeah, she went on an insane run back to third after losing to Finn round 2.
And I mean dropping no games, not even dropping no sets, dropping no games is messed up.
Yeah, she didn't drop a game from playing Finn until she lost to Kevin. Like it was a ridiculous run.
She got pretty unlucky versus Kevin, if I remember right, but that's very ahead of where we are right now, which is week 2.
Yes, we are currently in winners round 2 of this 32-man invitational bracket, and so immediately after beating Roro, you would say you have to jump into the builder. So is this team? I assume that this team that I'm about to pull up is a team that you made specifically for Crystal, right?
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll show it quickly. You don't have to talk about it super in depth, but I'll just pull it up quickly so people can see it.
I will talk a bit about it. I will say it's kind of based on an idea I had like a year ago. I brought in, I don't know, RoPL or DPPL or something like that. Versus, I think it was Alice, and I had a Scarf Gun with Roost with a CM Clef and a Mag. It's basically very similar to that, but with a Nidoqueen over Gengar.
Wait, this is wait, bro, this is not the right game.
No, it's a different team though.
Oh, okay, so we're talking about that team now. Sorry, I'll pull it up.
Yeah.
Sure. So we're talking about this now. Okay. All right, I have it pulled up. Yeah.
So this is the team I used game 1 versus Crystal. We're talking about the second replay, but this is the team I used game 1.
Yes.
And so it's very similar to that team. The only change is that there's a Nidoqueen over Gengar, because with Gengar, the team is very Machamp weak, and if you know anything about Crystal, that is a bad decision to make. It's you don't want to bring Machamp weak into Crystal. In general, you don't want to bring Machamp weak. It's just unpleasant to lose like that.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't a very good team. But putting Nidoqueen over Machamp actually helps a lot. Or a Nidoqueen over Gengar helps a lot with Machamp and with Infernape, and in general with Swampert too. It's pretty good when paired with Mag and CM Clef. And then there's the Scarf Gun with Roost, so it can absorb knockoff. And then the Bronzong and the Latias is kind of a compressed defensive core. Reflect Latias with T-Specs is pretty nice, especially with Mag support. And then the Bronzong just gets up rocks and keeps up rocks because it's got payback and is supported by a Mag. And has Explosion, so it can get a kill. It's a nice team. I used it again versus BKC, and he loaded a team that was pretty weak to CM Clef, so it matched up well again. But we're not going to talk about the game versus Crystal with this team. I think we're talking about the game 2 versus Crystal.
We're talking about game 2 versus Crystal. This team, notably, I think it's been used in a couple other places even since this run. I know Jester used it in DPPL finals, and he did win that game. So if you need more
That's
proof,
true. I did pass it to him for that.
if you need more teeth, more teeth, what the fuck? If you need more proof that the team is good, there you go. So anyway, game 2 versus Crystal. So, sorry for like being an idiot, but here's a quick view of the game 2 team if you want to see it. It's just more Loomtran.
Yeah, my prep was I want to bring this team game 1 because I want to bring T-Spikes, and I was like, maybe I could revamp this team, incorporate T-Spikes on it, bring that game 1, and then it was just like, well, I'll just bring offense. I like the move Focus Punch.
Yeah. Finn's made this very clear to me how much he really loves Focus Punch. It's really good, yeah. All right, so I'll just count down this time so we're watching at the same pace. 3, 2, 1, go. So another Azelf lead immediately. Clicking Thunderwave first, I think, is probably pretty smart, I would guess.
The risk is if it's Lumber Jirachi lead, which is pretty unusual. I wasn't really expecting that, and I thought, well, it's best just to trade powers. Most likely it's leftovers.
Yeah.
There's some chance that it won't get the power if it's Body Slam, right? Because it power chance and Body Slam chance.
But you want the Jirachi Parad on this team because you have slow meta and non-lefty Ctran. So,
yeah, and you also don't want your Azelf just get paralyzed and iron-headed out if you
also
go for
true,
taunt.
Yeah. That is also true. But yeah, it's both a short-term and a long-term thing. But yeah. All right, so they do trade pairs on turn 1. Turn 2, Crystal goes to Heatran to get her own rocks up, I assume.
Yeah, I just bring my own Heatran on it because I'm like, well, you're not clicking Earth Power.
Yeah,
you're going for a Fire Mover or
and Finn's
and I'm
timid Shuka. So yeah, you can just Earth Power here. But Finn clicks Flamethrower because he's a boss. It hits a Starmie though, so I assume
not really much better.
Upon seeing Jirachi, Heatran, Starmie, are you thinking like Paraspam?
I'm thinking there's definitely a Zapdos.
Yeah, that makes
it's probably
sense.
just like Zapdos, Breadum, T-Tar. That's like a Team Crystal's used before. She uses it later in this tournament. It's just a generally good 6.
Okay, so it's not like specifically Paraspam. It's just like good, sure. So is that
CB-Tar?
Like it did 82 to Rotom with non-boosted Pursuit.
That is CB-Tar. But the nice thing is because it stayed in to take 2 Thunderbolts, it's now very weak to Heatran.
Yes.
And because her Heatran is, it's Protect, Stealth Rock, I'm not really thinking it's Earth Power.
Yeah.
So her team is very weak to Heatran at this point.
Okay, I'm paused on turn 10, so we're gonna
Right, so I Spore immediately because I think she's just going to sack her Tar. I don't think she's going Jirachi on the potential.
That's what she does. She sleep sacks
Sub or Superpower or Focus
Sleep
Punch.
sacks T-Tar and then actually sacks T-Tar.
I'm gonna explain this turn sequencing because it kind of depends on what the moveset of Brelam is. In this case, I'm Focus Punch, Mach Punch, so I can't just sub and keep a sub, and I can't just Superpower, which covers both T-Tar being sacked and Jirachi coming out. If I want to kill the T-Tar immediately, I have to Seed Bomb, which does nothing to Jirachi, or Spore, which so I don't think she's going Jirachi, but I also don't want to Focus Punch, and going Spore immediately means that she's basically much more inclined to just sack the Tar.
Yeah.
So I just go for the Seed Bomb at that point.
Yep. So on turn 10 on Crystal off the Tar sack sends out Jirachi. So what's going through your head? Parad Jirachi that can't get slept in front of you. What's going through your head here?
Well, what's going through my head is that she doesn't want my Heatran getting in for free because her team is very weak to Heatran at this point. Her T-Tar is dead, and her Starmie is a bit chipped, and her Heatran is walled by my Heatran. Especially if it doesn't get paralyzed, it's very sad for her. Also, my Brelam is not going to die to anything this Jirachi can do. Most likely, it's probably Wish Tagged.
Yeah, and you have your Toxic Orb, of course, so you don't have to worry about even getting like Body Slam Parrot or anything, right? And Jirachi's Parrot, so you literally like have free reign to just make a play here. And so let's see what Finn does on turn 11.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love watching this every time. He Seed Bombs the Starmie like a boss. Oh
yeah, because
God.
Starmie's a huge threat to my team at this point. Rotom is dead, Azelf is paralyzed. If rocks go off, it's pretty hard to break Zapdos, and my Heatran just gives Starmie a free turn to click whatever it wants. I don't even have a good time switching into it defensively, even aside from spin.
So with Starmie gone, Finn's Heatran looks like the biggest threat I've ever seen now, right? Like,
yeah, she can still make it a bit harder. She ends up going immediately to Zapdos, which she just does to do flamethrowers. And she did talk a bit about how she could have sequenced this better, so the Zapdos was more of a threat. I'd have had to maybe blow up on it with like a Metagross, or get a Focus Punch Predict right or something, so she could have clawed her way back into it like that. But at this point, it's very hard, I think.
Yeah, at this point, especially considering your Shukatran, like the game is just over.
Yeah, she has to blow up her Heatran and then Mach Punch with Brelam. I can go into my Azelf after that. which doesn't die to seed bomb, although it does come close. And as long as I don't get paralyzed, I can get an explosion off and then just clean up with Metagross.
Yep. Even if you got parried though, like you can just go to. What do you have in the back again? You have I guess going to
Gyarados.
yeah, Gyarados. So I don't know. I guess you just go to your own Breloom and spam Mach Punch to chip it. I think it's kind of hard at that point, right? If you get full parried.
It's a little bit interesting. Yeah, it's a little bit interesting because you really want to not get beaten up with your Metagross, because you need it for the Jirachi, really. To at least have a consistent endgame versus the Jirachi. Because obviously Gyarados is pretty scary versus a paralyzed Jirachi, because even if Gyarados gets paralyzed, it's faster than the Jirachi, so it's not going to Iron Head flinch down. Like, that's a favorable interaction. But if Breloom is still alive, then it's less favorable because you can get paralyzed, and then Breloom can come out and C-bomb and yada yada. So it was nice to not get paralyzed. Let's be like that.
Yeah, sure. I definitely understand. Okay, so.
But with that, I've gotten past McMegan and Crystal.
Yeah, and that.
So I'm feeling very strong at this point.
Okay, and then so when did you play Crystal like in the week? Was it early or late?
I get the feeling it was later. I don't remember exactly though.
Okay.
But just because I built that team basically that week and had some time to test it, the first team.
Sure.
So I imagine I had a bit more time.
So so at this point you're thinking like, who else is even still like in winners at this point? Like who else is still in winners? I mean, your next opponent was pretty dangerous and still in winners, but at this point it's basically a game of.
I can say the winners bracket at that point. There was M Dragon, Conflict, Starmaster, Student of Sinnoh, Tricking, BKC, and Soulwind. And I got M Dragon was my next opponent.
You got M Dragon. So I think at this point it was basically just a game of how long can Finn dodge Kevin for. Because Kevin at this point, like, I don't know if he dropped a game through. I think he dropped one game to Christo, and that was like it, right?
Yeah, he was a bit of a monster this tour.
Yeah, he looked like the best DPP player on the planet during this tournament, and like he was using teams from like 3 years ago too. It looked like it was really funny.
Sometimes much longer than that.
Yeah,
but
he literally he was like Have you seen that clip from Pokemon Cypher of like Jaywitz pointing at like his like New Balance like basketball shoes and being like, "I still run circles around people on the court." That's like what Kevin was. That's like what Kevin was doing in this tournament.
That does sound appropriate, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So Finn mentioned this already, but your round 3 opponent was M Dragon. I feel like I don't really have like Roro and Crystal. Yeah, I feel like. In DPP, I don't really have much of a read on Mariano. So what were you thinking? What were you thinking about that?
I was thinking he's a really old player. He's been playing for a long time. He's got a lot more experience than I do. He'll probably just load whatever he's been loading. He won't probably bother prepping.
At least not that hard, right? He'll probably just
not that hard.
He'll take a quick look, right? But that's about it.
I believe he brought Scarfcon in all 3 games, for example.
Sure.
So he just kind of stuck with his comfort zone and played better than me. Spoiler alert, I was feeling very good coming off of those first 2 sets. And then I played versus M Dragon, and I didn't play very well. And he did play very well, but I ended up coming out on top. Partially because I got a bit of an advantage from team choices, at least in game 1 and game 2, although game 3 not so much. But mostly because I got lucky. Which we can talk about, because we're going to look at the replay where I did get lucky. Although I will say, game 2, basically, I loaded a Sol team. He loaded a more offensive team, like a Rose Raid team, I think. I had a pretty tough matchup versus my team. But I ended up throwing a one-end game by Iron Heading instead of Thunder Waving a Rotom.
Yeah, Finn actually told me before we started recording that he did not want to talk about that game under any circumstances, and then he just did. So I don't really know.
I didn't want to talk about it. I said that it wasn't the game we were going to go over.
Okay, sure. Okay.
That one's a bit longer, and
it's a bit longer, and he doesn't want to watch it because he's a little baby.
Again.
So yeah. So
this
anyway,
this one also doesn't reflect well on me.
That's actually true. Yeah, but I'll show you the team he used quick. It's another basic Loomtran team. This one's
probably one of the worst ones. I don't think this one's very good.
This one has lead Heatran though, and also non-lefties meta in the back. I feel like this is a little Jirachi weak, but
it's a few things weak. I don't think it's a very good team, but
yeah,
I felt okay with it at the time. So I loaded it. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, let's get into the game. So 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, turn 1. The first game we've gone over, Finn did not lead Azalf, and he loads I'd say a disadvantageous lead matchup in Heatran versus
It's
Tyranitar.
not necessarily that bad once he's revealed to be Scarfed.
That's true. Yeah.
However, I get really greedy on turn 2.
Yeah, you okay. He goes
So,
to,
yeah, to just explain this a little bit, I'm thinking, all right, -1 superpower, I can just switch in my Breloom, and that'll be good. Realistically, it's pretty unusual for a Scarftar to stay in there for the second superpower, just because it's so exploitable at that point, and preserving the Heatran sec is so obvious. Exploding immediately with Heatran would have just killed the Flygon, and is generally a better play, I think. Obviously, it's a bit of a prediction, but this sequence of plays just puts me pretty far behind. I end up going Breloom on his Flygon, and I'm scared of Mix because, well, he's revealed to be Scarftar, right?
yeah.
He's actually double Scarfed, which makes this matchup very, very hard.
Yeah, because you're
I think
looking
it's
at
both Scarftar week and Scarfgon week.
yeah,
it's
because
dire.
if it's Mix gone with Scarftar, you're thinking like, okay, I can still maybe pull out like a DD-Tar win, right? Like if I can find a way to kill like the Breloom, but once he clicks U-turn, you're like, oh no.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is how it ends. I've choked a game 2 that I was winning, and I've lost all momentum game 3 in a suboptimal matchup. You really can't be doing that.
Yeah, but reveals Tech Trend, so this is a weird team from M Dragon.
Yeah, I mean, M Dragon's teams are unusual. This is, I think, a team that would have been more popular a long, long time ago.
I feel that way about his ADV teams too, for what it's worth. But
he's just good. He's just good at the game.
He's very good at piloting them still. So honestly, team choice for him doesn't matter as much as it does for some other people. But yeah,
but yeah, he reveals a Skarmory, and I'm like, okay, well, this is pretty bad. I kind of have to just go into my Starmie and damage it. Because my team at this point, obviously, Heatran is dead. I've got a Metagross and a DD-Tar and a Scarf Rotom.
Yeah.
So it's a bit dicey. Especially since instead of focus punching with Breloom, I double into Metagross. Or, well, because I'm also scared of him just staying in at that point and being like Specs, for example, and sleep talking. So it's not so much a double as it is me being scared, and then he gets the Skarmory in without having to take a focus punch, which would have at least given me the mind game potential of focus punching on like a Spike or a Roost. Instead, I have to switch to Starmie immediately, Hydro Pump as he's like pretty bulky and just whirlwinds me out into my T-Tar. I can boost up to at least get some chip on it, but as you see, it's just not dealing that much.
Yeah, that's very clearly like full Fizzduff Scarm, which like damn.
And then on turn 13, I'm like, I really can't focus punch here. Like if I focus punch on Roost, it's great and all, but where's my Brave Bird switching to begin with, right? Like I've revealed that my flying resists are T-Tar, Metagross, and Heatran. If he just picks a flying type move versus Breloom or Starmie, that's pretty good for him. And the other guys just lose the Skarmory to begin with. So my logic is he's just going to Brave Bird here. So I have to bring out Rotom in my head. As he roosts, which is of course worse for me.
Yeah. And now like you're kind of in a position where like, oh, the Scarftar comes out. Oh, there's the first piece of luck.
Yeah, so I have to go Starmie on his Heatran. It's pretty bad looking for me, I'd say, until he sends out Scarftar, which of course at this range, it's not a mind game or anything. He just lives Hydro Pump and kills me with Pursuit. Except he doesn't live Hydro Pump because I get a critical hit. And now Starmie's actually a huge threat versus his team.
Yeah, Starmie went from basically like a dedicated like sack to tar basically to get maybe a spin-off or some Hydro Chip.
You get Hydro Chip so that Rotom can maybe be a threat, but realistically this game is like pretty over if that crit doesn't happen.
Yeah, but now instead of that we have offensive Starmie versus Scarfgon, which can't switch into it. A Heatran which can't switch into it, a Skarm which can't switch into it, a Sleeping Latios, and something else.
Yeah, so obviously that was really lucky, but it actually makes the game interesting because we've gone from a position where I've loaded a pretty tough matchup and have kind of mishandled the early turns to lose momentum, and I get a really lucky crit, and now all of a sudden it's actually, even with all that luck, I'm still not necessarily like in a dominant position by any means.
Yeah.
It's pretty close at this point. Hard to say who's really ahead. And so I think I probably have a bit of an advantage.
Lefties.
But yeah, I'm able to
I guess that makes sense with double scarf. Like it wouldn't be scarf here. No. Shit.
No, it wouldn't be scarfed.
Yeah.
What turn are you on exactly?
19. You just burned your T-Tar.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I was Lum and I just killed his Rotom with Crunch.
Yep, Scarf Gun
So that's
comes
pretty
in.
good.
Rotom's pretty free here.
Yeah, I mean his Flygon is his win condition. If he outrages my Rotom, it's pretty risky for him to do that. Because I could potentially sack something and then just kill it with Metagross, and yeah, he really needs his Scarf Gun. So I'm just gonna go into Rotom on the U-turn.
He does crit your Rotom with Lava Plume, which probably mattered, I'd guess. But
it mattered in the sense that I can't preserve my Rotom. Like I was thinking, okay, I can Thunderbolt once and I won't die, and then I can switch out. Or alternatively, I can just Thunderbolt twice and then he'll be in Mach Punch range. Neither of those things can happen at this point.
Yes. You do crit the Latios switch in instantly though.
And then I crit. I believe it would have died to Ice Beam anyway.
Yeah, it would have. So that one didn't actually matter. I would guess anyway, because it's not leftovers Lottie, so should die.
I believe. It might be a roll. No, I don't think it would have been a roll. It would have just died.
Okay. Yep. U-turn.
And then he brings out Flygon. He's obviously going to U-turn, so at that point, I can either go Metagross or Breloom, and I can't really go Metagross because if Metagross gets weakened, I lose to Outrage. So
yeah,
Breloom
so
it is.
Yeah, you go to Breloom. You EQ on the Flygon switching back in because I assume you thought he was just going to protect again, right? So you just thought like I'll just stay in and then play it, but okay.
Well, no, I didn't think he was going to protect. I thought he would stay in, honestly.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Because if he was going to protect, then I could get a free DD, right?
Yeah.
And I thought he was going Flygon, then I could have crunched.
With Tarso low, Heatran kind of loses to like all your guys, doesn't it? Especially if it's like not speed invested, which it probably isn't if it's protect Lava Plume.
It will still be faster than my Heatran, although he doesn't. Oh, sorry, it will still be faster than my Metagross and my Breloom, although he doesn't necessarily know that. But my Metagross and Breloom are like in the 180s. Heatran at minimum, unless it's minus speed, is going to be like in the 190s.
Sure. Okay.
So.
Yep. DD on the U-turn to Skarm was a nice play.
Yeah, because he doesn't really want to just give me a. Well, yeah, he doesn't really want to Earthquake into something and then give me Breloom. At this point. Because he doesn't have anything sleeping, right? He doesn't have like something sleep sacked. So Breloom's still scary. And lets me make that DD play. But of course, Skarmory is still going to take the Fire Punch. He sets up a layer of spikes, which is interesting. And I'm thinking at this point, maybe I can just crunch the Flygon as it comes out because he doesn't want to sack his Skarmory. But in the end, I'm too scared to do that. I'm thinking, well, what if he just thinks he can win with his Flygon and Heatran? So I attack with a Fire Punch as he just goes into his Flygon, and that could have been game. Instead, it was not game. And he gets to U-turn and kill my T-Tar.
Yeah, which is, I mean, you're still in a spot where you are very capable of winning from this point, though.
Slightly unfavored, but still capable of winning. Yeah.
Yes.
So Starmie comes out in Heatran, Hydro Pump's on the Protect, and now the turn. So I'm just pausing on turn 31. This is an interesting turn because, obviously, if I spin as he stays in, I lose my Starmie to Lava Plume. However, if I Hydro Pump and kill the Skarmory as it comes in, then he can just go Flygon U-turn, and that forces my Starmie to switch out, which means it's dead to Spikes. Which means I actually just lose to Heatran immediately, because neither of my other Pokemon are faster than Heatran. And both die to Lava Plume. That's not necessarily immediately obvious if you're a spectator, or even if you're M-Dragon, because you don't necessarily know my Metagross or Breloom speeds, but for me, I know that if I Hydro Pump the Skarmory sack, I lose instantly.
Yeah.
So I have to spin there, as far as I'm concerned. I do get that play right, and then I hit Hydro, which I needed to do because I wasn't Thunderbolt, I was Grass Knot.
Yep, that is true. You were Hydro Ice Grass. Yep. So
yeah, Grass Knot Starmie with the Thunder Punch Metagross. It's pretty nice coverage.
Yeah, it's also an interesting way to mix up your. It's also an interesting way to catch people off guard. I think. Like a lot of people would expect meta to be like, I don't know, Protector Bullet Punch or something in the last slot with that type of spread, or Agility maybe.
Agility or maybe Trick or maybe like Trick Scarf or Trick Iron Ball is what I'm thinking of. If it's Scarf, then you'd expect just Explosion. But yeah, I think at this point though, I used so much of the set that it wasn't really for surprise factors, just because I liked the set.
Yeah.
And then the game comes down to I have to Hydro Pump on the Heatran, I do, and then I
it's
have
just
to
all you have to do is
Mach Punch.
Yep, sack your Starmie and then Mach Punch the Flygon.
So even with all the luck I got, still a very close game.
Yeah.
He just loaded a smart team choice for the kind of team I was bringing with the kind of Loomtron offense, and this Loomtron offense in particular. One of the reasons I don't think it's very good. I mean, look at Scar Flygon versus it. It's brutal.
Yeah, you had to play so carefully around that, and even
Well, I didn't
like
even play that. I could have played so much better around it. I just got so lucky around it mostly.
yeah, I mean that's
But
fair, but
there were some definite turns where I had to really be very careful to not get certain things chipped into range of it, right? Like staying
yeah.
in with T-turn, U-turn, or going Brelum when that was necessary. But it was an interesting game, and I think it also kind of it set a tone. I think for I'm gonna keep going in this tournament, but it's not gonna be clean.
Yeah, yeah. I think just on the team choice, I think I definitely agree with you because I feel like if your opponent like you can't really wear down Scarfcon like that well is the other
Mhm.
thing because it's not like other like it's not like other like grounded Scarfers where it's like spikes weak so you can just like set a layer of spikes and know it can only come in so many times.
The idea sometimes with Flygon isn't necessarily wearing it down so much as you abuse a lock with like either a really potent like EQ resist or immunity like Brelum, or like just killing it with a steel type once it locks into outrage. And then you just want a team that can last for long enough. But this team can't necessarily last for long enough. It just gets worn down so quickly that actually
Yeah,
Flygon can just kill things with Earthquake. It doesn't necessarily need to get punished because Brelum's only
yeah.
going to be around for so long,
I mean, I feel like
especially with spikes.
lead Tyrann non-lefties meta, like you have Breloom of course, and then it's Scarf Rotom as well, so you don't really have that sturdy of resist to anything you can click
Yeah, or I mean,
outside of like
Jirachi is another
Earthquake, I
Pokemon
guess.
too,
Yeah,
right? Like Jirachi is
yeah,
another threat to this team. It
yeah,
was a pretty ambitious squad and kind of relied on Heatran getting a really explosive start, which it could have done, but it didn't do because I didn't click the right button.
yeah. It's true.
Um, yeah, not a team I'd load again, but
Okay.
yeah, it won
Yeah. So
or something. I don't know. Yeah, no,
we'll be
I got really lucky this set.
so next up after M Dragon, another Finn like. This at this point in the bracket, there's no one like everyone who's left in winners and even in the bracket in general, but specifically winners is gonna be like a really really dangerous player, right?
Right.
And so you've gone through Roro, you've gone through Crystal, you've gone through M Dragon, and you're thinking like, because the players left in winners at this point, I believe it was you, Star, Tricking, and Kevin, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So you dodged Kevin for one more round, but in exchange you have to play Tricking, who's very good in his own right.
He is, and he's not afraid to bring whatever he thinks will win. Even if that
Yes.
means going against what might look conventionally solid, right? He'll bring Paris Bam, he'll bring Rain, he'll bring whatever it is.
Yeah. And so speaking of this is all leading into something because speaking of things that aren't necessarily conventional, Finn, so Finn and I we're friends, we're in like a Discord server together with a few other people, and Finn was discussing some prep in there, and it led to this screenshot. This was in the lead up to prepping for Tricking. I must be prepared for Arrow HO. All my leads up to now aren't that good versus Arrow.
I mean, it's true. Yeah, I'd led with some Heatran, some Azelfs. I led with some leads that weren't so good into good old Arrow. So
Yeah. And
there he comes.
and what happens next is the game. So I need to hold on. I'm gonna do this quickly. Oop. Yeah. So we won't talk. Do you want to talk about this team now? This is
It's
the
like not a
team.
team I came up, or at least like it's a pretty normal looking team. I mean, the sets
Sure.
I decided to make it the Bronzong so that it can keep up pretty comfortably versus spinners, so that you can always have an avenue to pressure with Gliscor and Scarfdar. But no, it's just like a super mode Scarfdar. It's not really that interesting of a team.
Yeah.
It's a good team.
It is a good team, and you did actually bring it later in a game that we're gonna talk about, so pretty cool. But yeah, so all right, I have the game pulled up. 3, 2, 1, go. So take a look at who we see at lead. Yep. There he is, Aerodactyl. And it's funny that Finn specifically brought up Arrow along with this because yeah, Finn did bring a lead that was pretty good into Arrow. Reflect T-Wave Lottie is quite good into that. Like they get rocks, but your team doesn't really care that much about rocks outside of maybe
No, and it lets me pressure their team much more because with their arrow paralyzed, it's harder for them to keep hazards off.
Yes.
And their team obviously needs to keep hazards off if they're running an arrow lead, right? So, or at least
Yeah.
that's the general thought. That's not always the case. But
Yeah, paralyzed arrow will be slower than Clef and all that. Will be slower than Clef and all that. So it's like.
what's interesting is my Bronzong is actually slower than Aerodactyl even
Yeah.
after Aerodactyl's paralyzed. I'm pretty sure because I'm minus speed
Yeah, you're minus speed.
Bronzong.
Yeah.
Which is a bit unfortunate, but he still doesn't play those games and just
Yeah,
switches out immediately. Let me get rocks up.
Yeah, I mean your Bronzong is also walled by arrow is the other thing. Or walled by parrot arrow specifically.
That's true. Yeah, I am HP fire. Well, I will arrow back. You know, it's fine.
That's true. Yeah, because it's good. What Stone Edge? It's gonna be Taunt, Stone Edge, Earthquake last 3. Yeah, that makes sense. So.
But yeah, this is for sure not the matchup where you want this specific Bronzong. Like, you'd much rather have Gyro Ball, Explosion. You know, the actually immediately proactive moves rather than toxic and HP fire. Especially when there's a Gengar.
Yeah, I was gonna say, especially when tricking instantly
and a
on
taunt
turn 4 reveals Gengar.
There's a taunt DD-tar and a Gengar, so yeah. I mean, maybe I didn't prep all that well, but I at least had the general sense an arrow was coming. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even still, okay. So Skarm comes in on arrow here. Takes a Stone Edge, only does 27. Yeah, pretty.
I'm basically in a really good spot once hazards have gone up and I've kind of survived, especially once the Gengar's out of the picture. However, I probably misplay versus this T-tar. I mean, I don't know. I think my play is fine where I just sack the Bronzong because my Bronzong's pretty useless in this matchup and just get the hit on the Gliscor. I think that's actually a fine sequence. I mean, there are other lines where you immediately go T-tar and just go for the superpower, considering once it's Fire Punch, it's not going to be Earthquake, right? Once it's revealed Fire Punch, you can actually just go T-tar. That's pretty fine.
Yeah, especially considering especially once it reveals Taunt, it's like what. It's probably what...
Yeah, when it's Taunt Fire Punch, I could go T-tar there instead of doing what I did with Bronzong and Gliscor. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, probably a misplay. And then what's interesting is he's actually got an Outrage Gyarados. So I taunt it as it tries to Dragon Dance, but then he just goes immediately for the Outrage, which I was not expecting because I had a full health Fizz Def Skarmory, which I probably should have gone into in retrospect. It was a taunted Gyarados. I could have just gone Skarm. But I was thinking, all right, you know, I don't really want to, you know, even risk getting flinched and whatnot. I'd rather just go out and immediately start putting immediate pressure on with Latias. I've already got the Spike. If I can paralyze Metagross, that will be fantastic. His last is probably like, well, it could be a few things, but
probably another Steel type, right? I'd guess.
It could be a Steel type, it could be a Dragonite, it could be a few things, but I'm not really expecting it to be something that wants to switch into Latte. At least T-waving.
Yeah, I'd guess probably like Heatran or something, right?
I think it was a Dragonite, which is kind of what I expected.
Okay, yeah, Dragonite could be too. Yeah.
It's a bit unusual because obviously that's, you know, triple fighting resist. It's a bit of a floater heavy structure, but it's not necessarily bad at all. And yeah, he just immediately outrages my Latias. So I was thinking, that was probably not the right play.
Yep. Then
but that's fine because I can then kill the Gyarados with my Skarmory. And at this point, Skarmory basically wins if I don't throw.
Yeah, basically, because you can kill Gyarados and then immediately after that, like Skarm's at full, he goes to Arrow to try to chip it, I guess, to put it in range of his last, which was Dragonite.
Yeah, he gets some chip on it, but I'm able to stay pretty damn healthy and just kill it with a Brave Bird.
Yeah. So we end up at turn. Yeah. Oh, you realize Fire Fang. Interesting. Yeah. So turn 29, he sends out Dragonite against 81% Skarm. See, it's not dying. It's not dying into here, or maybe it does actually. Wait, I guess with lefties it doesn't.
Well, Left Orb Fire Punch does 41% as I just whirlwind it out into Metagross.
Yeah.
And so I've got a very free roost here. Of course, if he blows up or anything, then, you know, his last is just going to die to my Gliscor or my T-Tar at that point. Maybe he can E-speed past my Gliscor, but I've got a Scarf Tar, so he can't just trade his meta for my Skarmory. He has to find a way to kind of boost past it.
At this point, it's just, at this point, the sequence is just like, it's just like Whirl versus D-Knight Roost versus Metagross, right? Like that's all you're gonna do at this point.
In theory, that's correct. However, I actually don't do that, and the reason I don't do that is for, well, one reason. It's a misplay. It's objectively a misplay because roosting is correct. I beat this Metagross 1v1 with Skarmory. It's not leftovers or anything. I can just kill it with Brave Birds, even if it's Thunder Punch. It's not doing that much damage. If it's Life Orb, it's doing a little bit more, but it's killing itself. It's correct to not do what I did. However, my thought process was, I looked at the calc and I was like, okay, Agiligos, it's Thunder Punch. It's going to be, boosting up with its speed, and then it's going to be Thunder Punching through my Skarmory, and it kills my other two guys. So if it gets like a mash boost for my Skarmory, I'm just going to lose the game. So I think, well, okay, he's going to sack his D-Knight here and the reason I think that is because if his Metagross gets spiked on, I don't know exactly why I think this, but it's wrong. It's wrong. But I tried to cover it. I tried to cover it by switching to T-Tar on the D-Knight sack so that I can then just kill the Metagross with Fire Blast. I have Fire Blast on this T-Tar.
Sure.
He just mashes, and then I go Gliscor. He's not Life Orb. He's revealed not Life Orb. However, I just Earthquake. I don't Roost. Which is quite a misplay because it doesn't actually kill.
Yeah.
He lives comfortably and would kill me with Meteor Mash, and then would win with Explosion. Here's the thing. There are a few things I didn't take into account in this endgame. One, I thought Skarmory would live Explosion after Rocks, because the calc set is jolly. However, Skarmory does not live Explosion after Rocks, because actual Agiligos are adamant. That's kind of just how they are. They're just adamant.
Yep. So
and yeah, I could have, even after sacking Tar, I could have just like roosted. So this was quite thrown. I did everything I could to lose this game really after a certain point where I had like a dominant lead based off of kind of how the early game went with getting hazards up and surviving his big threats. And then I sacked my Lati, and then I kind of tried to lose to Metagross as well. But I dodged Meteor Mash, and I won. And then I got a crit early on in the next game that kind of made it unplayable. And so I beat Tricking and advanced.
Yeah, so at this point, Finn has not always the cleanest wins, but has beaten 4 very strong players in a row. And at this point, there's no dodging him.
I will say, yeah, there's no dodging him at this point. I will say it's funny because Mel actually messaged me. Rick, he messaged me before the set, like, be very cautious of Tricking. He's lucky and good. Be aware of this. And I was like, yeah, me too. And he's like, I don't see you as such a lucky player. And after the set, he was eating his words. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I guess we can move on to the big man now.
Yeah. So I believe there was something you wanted to discuss. There was a team you wanted to discuss. Well, not yet, right? Because there was set 1 and then set 2. So.
Yeah, we'll talk about set 1.
Yeah. So set 1. Going into this, first of all, the nicknames on Finn's team are an album that I sent him. Actually, that's pretty cool. But second of all, I remember you mentioning going into this set or going into. I don't remember if it was winners finals or grand finals, but I remember you saying like, yeah, I think Kevin has realized that every team I've ever built loses the Super Rachi or some shit like that. And he proceeded to load quite a lot of that Pokemon. I remember this.
He did load 3 of those Pokemon. He did win 3 times with that Pokemon.
Yes.
It's a good thing he didn't load it another time because I then wouldn't have won this tournament. But no. This game, he doesn't have a Super Rachi.
Okay.
So that's good.
Yep. So first game, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, turn 1 we have The Awakening Tyranitar. It's a Ahmad Jamal. The Awakening is the name of the album. Insta switching out of Rachi because you have to. Like even if you're Scarf, like you have to.
It's not worth the risk because what I would be doing is just getting up rocks with Tar anyway. Like I might as well just go
of
into
course.
Heatran and do it.
Yeah.
I've got double rocks on this team.
Yeah, because the Tar is just Sash Rocks lead, so you can use it to trade into something early, and if you don't manage to get rocks, you can get rocks with Heatran later.
It kind of I used a very similar team versus M Dragon game 1 where the T-Tar got off a ridiculous start because it forced out his Scarf Tar and was able to kind of just beat down his whole team because his Skarmory couldn't deal with it at taunt. His Milotic just switched into Crunch, got taunted on the recover. And he just put in, an excessive amount of work versus his team.
So turn 3, he goes to
like,
his
I'll do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I think this lead Tar set is really cool. But turn 3, he clicks Calm Mind instantly. What are you like? I feel like clicking Calm Mind instantly is kind of a weird play, right? I guess if it's revealed.
Well, he knows I'm not. He knows I don't have a Pursuit Tar probably, right? Because it's like a lead Tar that is obviously not like a defensive team entirely, right? So.
I suppose, but given the full health Heatran and the full health Tyranitar and the full health Rachi that just switched in, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like maybe you could have just like doubled or something. I don't know though. I guess that does tell you something about his team though, if he's clicking Calm Mind.
Well, that's true. You know, we know it's going to be a bit bulkier.
Yeah.
But probably it's well, it's interesting because it's leftovers, so that definitely means that it's going to be a bit more of a bulky set. But I was thinking when I initially saw Combine, I was like, maybe this is just like an offensive Combine set, you know, like a life orb thing. And then you obviously immediately see lefties, but like that was the first thing that crossed my mind.
Yeah, I feel like if clicking Calm Mind versus this revealed, I would think maybe it was like CM Surf or something, right?
Oh wait, it revealed lefties before CM was used.
Oh
Never
yeah, it
mind.
did. But
I'm talking total shite.
sure. But I feel like I'd still think that. I'd still be like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
maybe it's Calm Mind Surf or something with if it's clicking
Mhm.
it versus revealed T-Tar Heatran or something, right? Like, but yeah, so he
And
just
he wants he wants them specifically weakened, so maybe he's got something like a rotor
sure,
in the
sure.
back or whatever.
But he just insta switches out, goes to Empoleon, gets Thunderwave. We'll come back to that. Um,
Yeah, so I do get a free hit here because I HP ground to see full powers, and then I go for
yeah.
another HP ground as he surfs. It does quite a lot, and I'm like, well, okay, I'll switch out now. I've gotten some nice chip on it, and I can threaten it out with Brelum. However, I'm not actually going to attack the Impulse, and I'm just going to Spore on the switch.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I don't think 58% is high enough to the point where I think you'd want to keep Empoleon there. You just leave
Right,
it in,
and
or you don't
yeah,
want to
if you
leave
just
it in. That's way too risky. Even if it has Ice Beam, which you don't know that it does at this point. Even if it has Ice Beam, you don't want to leave it in
you
here
you can
because
assume that has Ice Beam, but even still, you know, it's really early in the game to just be sacking to like a superpower, because then I still get a Spore later on probably.
yeah,
So
exactly. If I feel like
it's basically
the
it's
risk
like a
reward there is
momentum
just
loss
not
for me
there.
to not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have to as well for me. I think the risk reward is kind of not there for me to super. Like it's really hard for me to then kind of find momentum in this matchup if I just immediately superpower and am forced out.
Yeah, if you
Especially because his Empoleon is a big threat to my team. So
yeah, if you
well, I don't
superpower
even
into
have superpower.
Lottie,
Is the other thing. I
oh,
actually now that I think about it, I don't have superpower. I'm
are
just
you
bluffing it.
mock
I have
focus
focus punch,
again?
back
Sure.
punch. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but if
So I'm
you're,
like,
oh yeah, sorry.
so I kind of make that prediction before I actually send out the Brelum. I'm like, okay, he's not gonna stay in.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a fair prediction to make too, because I feel like you clicking an attack there is just not like you let up. You don't keep the pressure on, and if you don't keep the pressure on, you're gonna probably lose to this Latios eventually. Or either the Lottie or like the Empoleon or something in the back, right? Like
The Lottie isn't a huge threat. What is a huge threat is the Empoleon, actually. The Empoleon is a big threat to my team. I've got a Gyarados and what's my last again? It's a
it's
Scarf Latias, isn't it?
Gyarados. Yeah, Gyarados
Scarf
Scarf Lottie on
Latias.
this. Yep.
And so my Empoleon answers are really not great. It's gonna pressure the hell out of my team with just its Surf move, because it can still get a lot of turns off of my Jirachi or Latias. So I really don't want to give it a lot of turns, which means I
Yeah.
want to actually apply some pressure. Okay, so then Focus Punch as he sends out Jirachi, and it takes nothing. But I know it's not going to be a wish, so I can just switch out.
Yeah, 50
As
is
he
like
U-turns.
no damage. What the fuck?
He U-turns out into Gliscor, and I'm like, this is not good. My team obviously doesn't have a good time switching into Gliscor. I've got Gyarados and Latias. Gyarados, there's rocks up, you know. That's not ideal.
Yeah, I feel like the big thing with Gliscor is that like it's especially for like an offensive structure like this, like how the fuck do you switch into EQ Ice Fang, especially with hazards up?
What's interesting, I am actually Shukaberry. I could technically stay in and just go for an explosion. However, it's a bit tough for a few reasons. One, I actually do still want Heatran. It's pretty good versus his team. His Latias is sleeping, his Empoleon is weakened and paralyzed, and his Jirachi is still a relevant threat to my team. And aside from that, if he's like SD, which he feasibly could be, and like add-on max attack, he might just kill me. I think it's a roll. I'm not like a super bulked out Shuckatran. I would live if it was a defensive Gliscor, which is most Gliscor. But it's kind of early to take that risk when Heatran is still good. Even like the trade is not necessarily favorable enough for me to be like, okay, I'm gonna take the risk. You know?
Yeah.
It kind of pays off.
We go to Lottie and get knocked. So I feel like knock at this point rules out the possibility of Ice Fang. It's gonna be be EQ Taunt Roost and knocked off at this point.
It could have feasibly wing attack if there's like a mag, but I don't really expect mag, so yeah, I'm expecting it to just be taunt.
Yep.
I mean it could be wing attack anyway. You know, people run all sorts of Gliscors, but
okay,
I'm gonna be a bit more aggressive with my Brelum versus Gliscor, I reckon, knowing that it's most likely walled.
That makes sense. So at this point, like losing Lottie's Choice Scarf is a little annoying, but
it's okay, honestly.
Yeah, it's a little annoying because you might might want it to trick like a Clef later or something, or an Empoleon, but it's also fine because this means you can like click an attack and then Healing Wish after something switches in. right?
Right, and I do attack into a clef as he reveals clef, which is a bit interesting. You wouldn't automatically assume that, but he does have a clef, and he wishes as I go into T-Tar. I'm kind of assuming wish softboiled. Well, okay, I'm considering wish softboiled, but I know BKSA also likes wish attacked, so it's not immediately obvious which it'll be.
Yeah, so T-Tar comes in and just clicks superpower into the Gliscor for like no damage.
Yeah, I mean, Crunch also would have done a damage to Gliscor because it would have received the wish anyway. So I was like, well, I'll just make sure the Clef doesn't receive the wish if it's wish softboiled. Um, he could have also gone Jirachi, but I thought Gliscor is well. I thought basically whatever he does, I don't want Clef healing up because his Clef heals up. It's pretty hard for me to actually do things with my Lati and my Heatran. And I have to be able to keep it somewhat weakened for Jirachi. Obviously, you think Jirachi can just flinch through it, but Jirachi is looking like a pretty relevant win condition if I can weaken the Empoleon and the Jirachi a little bit, his Jirachi a little bit more.
And I feel like given what's like the moves that have been revealed, I think that's entirely feasible, especially given the fact that you still have a healthy Heatran and a Breloom and things like that. So especially hitting Jirachi, right. I feel like won't be a problem.
Yeah, and I figure my Gyarados can probably weaken Empoleon. It's unfortunately not Earthquake. It's Stone Edge, which is definitely worse in this matchup. But even though that does mean it isn't going to break past Empoleon immediately on its own, it means that I can weaken it a bit more for the teammates. So that's useful. However, obviously flinching through a full health Gliscor with a weakened Jirachi is not ideal. So I want to actually be able to put some damage on this Gliscor before I ever have to end up in that situation.
Yeah. So you go to
and
Latias.
Jirachi too, because
yeah. So you go to Latias for that purpose, basically, because you know at this point your Latias walls it, and he makes a good play and goes to Jirachi.
Yeah, he doubles to Jirachi.
Yeah.
And then U-turns on my
which means he can
Heatran, so he's just chipping my Heatran more and more, and my Latias more and more. Yeah, and I'm a bit hesitant to go into Breloom, and the reason for that is because I've already used my Spore.
Yeah, because
you can't not just that immediately threatening with just Seed Bomb necessarily. It's a relevant threat. I probably should have gone to it on the turn I went to Gyarados, or at least it was an option to go to it on the turn I went Gyarados.
Yeah, I think Gyarados is fine because it covers him like staying in and just clicking Earthquake or something too.
Actually, yeah, no, I take it back. Gyarados is fine because Breloom's only at 62. I didn't realize actually it was a bit lower than I thought. Taking Earthquake there isn't ideal, so yeah, that's fine. Go Gyarados, and I get a DD versus the Clef. He Seismic tosses and then knocks. I don't think the order matters that much.
No, as long as both happen, I think it's fine, right?
Yeah, and you get the Protect, wearing me down a bit more. I just Waterfall because I mean it hasn't revealed Protect at this point, right? It's a silly risk to kind of predict that with a DD.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, because
you don't even get that much more.
Yeah, and if he just tosses to Sack Clef, like you just die, right?
Which is very feasible because if he's soft-boiled, then he will just probably do that.
Yeah.
Or at least if he switches into, because even if he doesn't do that, if he switches into something else, it's also fine to still just attack, right?
Yeah, of course, because with Sand Up, chip is better than no chip, especially with Latias asleep, right? Like everything else is taking permanent chip basically, except for Jirachi, and that heals very slowly. Jirachi probably dies actually on swap in, so you don't want to. You won't go to that. It would be sleeping Lati that can't recover it off instantly because it hasn't burned a turn.
So I don't bother predicting anything with my Gyarados. I'm just gonna attack what's in front of me with Waterfall and Ice Fang, especially because there's not actually that much reason to predict an Empoleon coming in. I don't have Earthquake. So
yeah, of course.
Might as well just take the kills that are available, take the chip that's available to me. He doubles into Breloom, switches into Breloom from the Empoleon, kind of scouting for that Earthquake. And if he goes to Breloom on the Earthquake, and if I don't have Earthquake, I'll Waterfall. So it's a good play because then he can revenge me with Back Punch.
Yep.
Gets an extra. Basically, he trades some health on Breloom so you can get an extra turn of Sand Chip, which puts me in range of Back Punch. So rather than going Breloom immediately, he gets the extra chip. However, at this point, I can follow up with a Jirachi.
Yep. I
immediately just go for an Iron Head as he goes Emp. Maybe should have just HP grounded, but of course it's pretty hard to do that when he hasn't yet burned Spore.
Yeah.
Breloom as ever being just so difficult.
Yeah, and then turn 26, Finn makes a play. Finn makes the Latias play here, which I think is fine, which I think is fine because you don't.
It's justifiable for sure because you live Surf. However, you don't live Ice Beam, which is what he clicked.
You don't live Ice Beam, and I feel like also he's not guaranteed to Ice Beam. There's the other thing, right? Like, because I feel like
no, well, he just makes the correct prediction and doesn't get rewarded for it because he gets full powered there, which is unfortunate for him. The game is not over if he does get the prediction. I do still have Jirachi. However, obviously, you know,
He'd
saying
be
that,
in a
like,
good. He'd be in a very
he'd
good
be
spot.
he'd be in a
Yeah.
very good spot. You know, Jirachi at that point, you could definitely make the case that Jirachi was stealing the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Ladia's being alive means that I can get the kill on the Empoleon and then also
Yep.
keep it around for a healing wish later potentially. I actually don't healing wish. Have we got to the turn where where Latios dies to get some chip on the Gliscor?
No, I was just gonna comment on the fact that like Kevin's just able to run the same interaction with U-turn Rachi basically, where he just gets to get like a little more chip on your Heatran to the point where maybe he can win with his Rachi later.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, his Jirachi is actually slower than my Heatran. It's funny.
okay, so never mind. But yep, you sack Luddy to get 75 on Gliscor, which basically means it's dead to
Yeah.
Rachi. At
So
this
that
point,
turn's pretty interesting because obviously if he just roosts on Draco, then his Gliscor is still very healthy and it's very hard to win with Jirachi. However, if he roosts his healing wish, then that's a bit worse for him. And so he just goes for a knockoff, potentially trying to catch, well, because it can catch Breloom. If I healing wish up Breloom, he can knock off the Toxic Orb. And if I healing wish up Heatran, he still knocks off a Sugar Berry. So he can still kill him with Earthquake.
yeah,
So it kind of covers the healing wish play, whatever I want to healing wish up. That's the logic behind knockoff.
yeah,
However, I don't healing wish. I just go for the Draco immediately and get the chip.
yeah. And even then, it's still like knockoff still picks up the kill, but at this point, it's like your Jirachi has basically all but won the game at this point.
His Jirachi is still out of range of my like, so he can still
He can still like body slam
trade
you,
power.
sure.
Yeah, and his Breloom is not necessarily going to die to a single hit, so he can go for a Spore. So actually, the odds are not in my favor if I just immediately go for it.
Yeah, but I think going to Rachi first is good though, because it forces him to make a decision as to how he's going to answer
He has to either sack his Gliscor or get chipped on Jirachi, which is good for me.
Yeah.
He goes into Jirachi and I go into Titar, and I get pretty lucky getting the crunch through the para. However, I'm basically just sacking this so Heatran can come in after without getting paralyzed, because then he just gets a kill.
Yeah, so
he does just sack his Jira.
Yeah, the crunch doesn't. Yeah, this doesn't really matter because you said your Heatran is faster, which we learn on turn 35, I think, when you send it out.
Yeah, I hit the Fire Blast. He goes into Breloom to just revenge me with Mach Punch, which is fine by me because then I can go into my own Breloom and win the game with Mach Punch.
Yeah, because at this
even
point,
if he doesn't crit, he loses to Jirachi.
Yeah, your Breloom is it literally does not matter at this point. I remember watching this. I remember watching this game live.
It's to ensure that Ironhead doesn't have to flinch.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this was a pretty tough matchup that I think I mentioned this to Will that I actually prefer the Machamp version of this team to the Breloom version of this team, which is unusual for me because I don't like Machamp and I do like Breloom. But Lead Titar, yeah, something about this team didn't feel that good to me. However, I got really lucky. I got outplayed on a few turns, but I got really lucky with the full power on the turn that he clicked Ice Beam.
Yeah.
Because it means that I just get to, get a kill on Empoleon and a Draco on Gliscor because I get that other prediction correct.
Yeah, and worth noting, this was game 3 of the
huge
set.
Reward.
So
this was game 2 of the set, wasn't it?
Right, because you got you got kind of smoked game 1, and then this happened. I remember that.
Yeah, I loaded a team with water resist, Starmie and Breloom versus like Specs, Kingdra with like a Gyarados. And
I do remember that. Yeah. So
and yeah,
at this point it was 1-1, and Finn did go on to prevail in game 3 as well versus someone who had been performing like one of the strongest players like out of anyone. Like he looked untouchable up until this point.
He basically did. Yeah, game 3, I loaded the Carmine Clefable Nidoqueen Mag team again, and he loaded I think triple. He had like Hippowdon, Gliscor, and Flygon, like Scarfgon. And Clefable was just like a huge, because he had a Clefable of his own, but it didn't have Encore.
I remember watching this and thinking like, how the fuck does Kevin's team beat CM Clef? Like it just like I don't know.
Yeah, that was a really good matchup for me.
Yeah.
You'll notice though in this game, my timer was like very low throughout the entirety of it. I went down to 5 seconds a few times. Like I was constantly 20, 10. It was very low timer. It was a tricky game, I think.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting one to look back on.
It's that, and also I can imagine like the feeling. I can imagine you feeling like, okay, I know BKC is BKC, but I made it all the way to winners finals. I don't want to drop to losers and then get third. Like that's a really shitty feeling.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I've already lost the game to BKC, so I'm like, I really want to win this game and pull it back. So.
Yeah, and then you managed to, and then in winner's side of grand finals, they played pretty much immediately, if I remember right, and Finn kind of got Finn had the like soul sucked out of him by a Stone Edge crit, if I remember right.
I think what happened was I think Crystal and BKC like almost RFN'd, or like they played pretty early in the week, and then like I don't know, 20 minutes after that, I played versus BKC like immediately. I played versus them because I was like, all right, I've got a couple teams ready. I've got enough teams for set one at least.
Yeah.
Because okay, so I guess to set the stage a little bit, having beaten BKC in winners finals, he went on to play against Crystal for losers finals, and then the winner of that game got to go on to the grand finals and play against me. But they had to win twice, and I had to win once, and it was BKC.
Mhm.
So he had to win 2 sets, and I had to win 1 set, and he won the first set.
Yeah,
which is the set we're talking about now.
Yeah, so the first set that happened, we don't have a replay pulled up for this, but it was
no.
It was.
I mean,
we can pull one up, but I remember that set. I remember watching that set like on my break at work, and I remember it being.
We can kind of summarize it, right? Which was Super Archie Goob.
Yeah,
no.
The first game was Super Archie Goob. The second game was
So game one, I put it into a position where I had to get one of 3 body slams. So I was.
Yeah, that's.
I had a paralyzed Jirachi that was in range of. Well, it had 3 chances to get a body slam power on Kevin Super Archie.
That was Kevin Super Archie was tricked to Scarf, locked into Psychic.
It was locked into Psychic, and my Jirachi was paralyzed, and I didn't get any of the paralysis, so I couldn't even reveal his last. I might have lost anyway, depending on what his last was, but I had some Pokemon left alive, so it would have been an interesting endgame perhaps, but I just lost. And then in the next game, it's interesting. I managed to lose game 2 after killing a Zapdos for free turn 1 with Aerodactyl. Maybe we should have pulled that reflect. It's pretty interesting. But basically, what happens is I try to set up with Gyarados versus his T-Tar, and it gets crit. There's some other stuff that I don't play perfectly either. Like I switch a Breloom into a Wisp.
Yeah, but
I think I was in a very good spot to just win.
At the point when Zapdos had died, your Gyarados was in a really good position, and then when I got crit, I remember
because he tricked his Scarf away with Rotom. So yeah.
At that point, it's like he doesn't really have many resources left.
So I was like, all right, we'll play set 2 another time. I was like, I've got to take a break and actually have some teams ready. So
yeah,
we played the next set like a week later.
Yeah, you spent like 4 or 5 days preparing for this, and set 2 was a good set. I went game 3. We're about to watch game 3, the last game of the tournament. But before we do, let's discuss. We
can talk about the prep because I loaded 3 stall teams, and the first stall team I loaded was Celebi, and the thought process behind the Celebi was, okay, well he's loaded Super Archie a lot versus me. It's done really well versus me. He's probably just going to load it again, or at least I want to be ready in case he does. And Celebi looks good versus he's brought a lot of water types. He's brought a lot of Breloom. I'll load Celebi. I want to load Stall. I'll load a Celebi Stall. He loaded a Super Archie team that had Lum, HP Fire, Modest, Jirachi, and it just KO my Celebi as I tried to T-Wave it.
And
yeah. I did not win that game.
Yeah, he got goobed, unfortunately. He did pull it back in game 2 though with a second stall team.
Which was
the team we're going to talk about. Yep. So this is the team you might recognize from actually Finn's first round against McMegan, the game that I was talking about earlier. Game 2, he loaded this team, and part of the reason why it's so interesting, at least to me, is because at least when I think of DPP in 2020, what the fuck year is it? 2023. I don't think of like spinner stall. I feel like a lot of stall teams now tend to forego spinners in exchange for just like not being that spikes weak, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or in exchange for having the ability to deal with the opposing floaters like very well, so your own spikes win instantly. But
what's interesting about Hippo is I think it's really hard to make a kind of a satisfying Hippo team around that concept. Just because the Hippowdon itself is so valuable in a lot of cases.
It's
having
not like
those spikes wear it down is very brutal.
Yeah,
it's not like you can just slap a T-Tar on and then just like, well, as long as the Skarmory doesn't get too many turns to roll the T-Tar in, it's okay even if it's getting hit by spikes because you don't have to switch it in constantly.
Yes.
Hippo's different.
Yeah, Hippo is different because you're gonna be resetting rocks probably. If there's a spinner, you're gonna be resetting rocks at least twice, but you're also just switching it into things because it's more of it's like it has recovery. It's like a wall as opposed to T-Tar, which is like a one-time trapper and then you sack it to something, right?
Right. The more value you can get out of Hippo, the better. Especially because you can be phasing around with your hazards up. You can get a lot of value out of Hippo, but it does mean that you're more kind of inclined to run actually a spinner on the team. So this is Hippo Starmie.
Yeah, and part of the reason why Starmie is so important to this is, 1, for the rapid spin, but 2, because it synergizes very well with CM Lottie. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so it's actually got a few functions. First of all, it's just really fast, which is nice on a team that doesn't have Scarf Star. 361 speed, it outspeeds anything that's unboosted, so that's pretty good.
Yes.
You can speed to other Starmie and hit them with Thunderbolt as well, which sounds unreliable, and it is, but that's because Starmie's broken, and how else are you going to handle Starmie when you don't have a Ghost or a T-Tar of your own? But also, having Thunderbolt means that you can open up the Latias move slots because you can cover Gyarados with your Starmie, and then have your Latias be like a Calm Mind Dragon Pulse HP Fire set, which is also nice because Starmie can then, bring out the T-Tar earlier into the game, force some chip on it because they don't want to just constantly have their hazards be reset and then, never be able to break past like Hippo and Jirachi.
Yeah.
They have to react to the Starmie, which means that Latias has more free reign in the end game.
Yeah, and for example, this is basically what we saw play out versus Roro, right? Where Starmie basically traded itself for Tyranitar early, and that opened up, that basically meant that CM Lottie had a free win, basically. But Finn played it really slow and scouted the last, which is the right thing to do in that scenario. But yeah, that's the type of synergy I feel like is really interesting about this team. It's very good in stall mirrors because of that interaction, basically.
It's definitely interesting. It's because obviously other stall teams can also be really threatening to it. Because if you've got like Gliscor and Scarfstar,
yeah, of course,
those are huge threats as well. So it's definitely an interesting team to play. One thing that's kind of interesting is it's actually using the Xgal Restock Jira, which when I first heard of that set, I was like, there's no way that's good. And then I built this team and I was like, okay, it kind of has to be that because otherwise, how do you actually beat Brelum, for example?
Man? Yeah.
How do you beat the Mushroom Man?
Because you're not running like the normal ice, the Lotties that you'd expect here, or the Lotties that most people would expect upon seeing like Hippo, Skarm, Clef, Rachi. They expect, oh, it's like really physically bulky with Recover and Ice Beam, right? It's CM here, so
right. It's CM. It's like got a lot of speed, some special attack. It's not even max HP. It's got no physical defense investment, and the Starmie has Hydro Pump Thunderbolt, which means it doesn't have a move to hit Brelum. So there's a physically defensive Skarmory with Drill Peck, and there's a Restock Jira, and it really needs to be Restock Jira. And that actually becomes very important. It's quite useful in my game versus Roro because it lets it, get whisked without immediately dying, so it can kind of sit on the Rotom for a bit, which actually is exactly what happens in this game too. It sits on the Rotom for a little bit, but it's a very different Rotom set.
Yeah. Is this the game we're talking about, or is it? I think
this is the game we're talking about, isn't it? Are we looking at game 3 instead?
Yeah, we're looking at game 3. Game 3 is the
okay.
one.
Okay, never mind then. Yeah. So I load the set versus BKC game 2 of the final set.
Yeah. So I have the other. I have the other team.
Rotom.
I have the other team pulled up. Yeah.
I have to like sit on the Spite Rotom with my Jirachi because it just like blows past my Clef. It's brutal.
Yeah. That was. I remember seeing Spite and I was like, dude, what the fuck is Kevin doing? But
one thing about Hippo Starmie Jira is that, or I guess Hippo Starmie in general, is that it's a lot more Rose Raid weak than most stalls are. Because generally with a stall team, you're more, Spike Immune, you're pretty okay with, there being a Rose Raid because you've got your Clef and your Lati, and you're generally pretty resilient to hazards. However, Starmie Hippo, that's 2 T-Spike weeks. On top of, at a Jira, that's 3 Spike weeks. So the matchup becomes a lot dicier, even if it is perhaps slightly favored, just because Clef is such a big deal in that matchup. But that's game 2. We're looking at game 3 though, because basically I lost game 1 because I had the Celebi team and he had the Super Achi, and he just he got the better end of it. He positioned himself better, and I didn't play so well. And then game 2, I ended up surviving with the Hippo stall versus like a Spite Rotom Rose Raid team, double Ghost even. It was a pretty cool team. It had like a Scarf and Polion. It was a really weird team. Yeah, it was weird. But then we move on to game 3, and I think we're just gonna look at this game because it's the final game of the entire tournament.
Yeah, I'll put this one on fast because it's it's good. It's a longer one if I remember right.
I think it's like 80 turns or something.
Well,
it's not too long because just the way the luck goes, it ends up ending pretty quickly.
Sure. But all right, so 3, 2, 1, and I'll transition.
So I guess while kind of some of the stuff is happening, the team is it's the same one that I use versus Tricken, where it's a much more defensive spikes build with very spike immune. It's got the Scarf Tar supporting the Gliscor, but other than that, it's 5 spike immunes.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep hazards up and apply pressure slowly with knockoff and Gliscor. And so in this matchup,
on turn 3, Kevin. So first of all, Kevin goes T-Tar into Clef into Gastrodon. And you're like, this is the first time he stalled you out of all like what 8 games there were.
Well, no, because he brought stall versus the CM Clef team.
Okay, right. So the second time he stalled you out of 8 games. And you had brought like so much stall to the point where were you prepared for a stall mirror game 3?
Well, I'd loaded two teams. So the first two games of the set, I'd loaded Hippo Starmie actually. The first one was Celebi, the second one was well, not Celebi, the second one was like Latias.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, all right, well, I've loaded these teams. He's probably going to load like a Spikes build, maybe like a Scarfstar. He might just keep loading offense, but it's pretty likely he's going to load like Spikes and just try to trap my spinner. And so I'm not going to bring a spinner. I'm just going to bring Spike Immune.
Okay, so you loaded this like very consciously. Okay, that makes sense. All right, but yeah, that's the nice thing about like. So he does reveal himself to be Yawn Gastro, which is like the one thing he could have actually hit your Bronzong with.
But this is not too bad because it means I get rocks up and can just sack my Bronzong to sleep. And
yeah, now
I mean,
like
Bronzong's still hard to kill. It just means it burns more PP if they try to attack it.
Yeah,
It's not even
exactly,
that bad.
exactly. And now you can just go Skarm and trade layers, and now we've entered gaming mode.
Right. The fact he goes Skarmory immediately on my Bronzong and lets me go Skarmory too is favorable for me because he's got a Gastrodon and I have a Bronzong. So the layers work out for me, I think.
Yeah. Especially considering like you don't know. Would you assume he has a Gliscor with the Gastro at this point? I feel like that's not entirely well, it gets roared in like immediately, but I feel like
it gets roared in immediately, so it's not really a prediction I have to make, or like I don't have to be thinking about it for too long.
Sure.
But
I feel
mean,
like
it's one of the options, but yeah,
I feel like upon seeing Gastro, I'd think it's less likely to be a Gliscor, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Well, looking at this team, right, I'm assuming that the last two from T-Tar, Clef, Gastro, Skarmory last two were fighting resists, so
yeah,
there's going to be a Latias. It could be a Gliscor or a Rotom, but it's not that surprising to see Gliscor.
Sure, that makes sense, I guess. All right.
I mean, some turns pass. I absorb. Okay, so I go Bronzong on Gliscor and it knocks me off. So if it's Ice Fang, then Gliscor can't really damage Bronzong. If it's knockoff, then it actually can wear down Bronzong. However, that means it's walled by my my Gliscor. I have a Gliscor of my own. It has Ice Fang at his max speed taunt. So
yeah, and that Gliscor,
is a huge threat to his team.
Given these 5 revealed, your Gliscor looks incredible.
His last is probably a Latias, which can take it on.
Yeah.
But as long as I don't get my T-Tar world in too much, I can put some threatening situations with Taunt Gliscor and Scarfstar.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of skipping through this game because it's a bit longer, but his Clef gets in on my Clef in like turn 20.
Yeah.
And we just trade Nox because he goes to Clef predicting my Encore, which is an insane. That's like really efficient. That's good play. But it means that then we can just trade Nox because the thing about Gastro is that yes, he can stop me from knocking off initially because of Sticky Hold, but because he has to recover at some point, I can then Encore lock him into Softball or lock him into Recover, and then I can always knock something else on his team.
Yeah, exactly.
So he just bites the bullet and trades Nox immediately.
Yeah, and now he has something that's Sponge Knock at this point, so he doesn't. And especially taking Knock on Clef early is nice because it means versus opposing Clef, you can just always go to your own Clef.
I can always go to my own Clef, but he can also always switch between his Clef and Gastro. Yeah. He's just getting worn down by hazards is his issue. I can Encore him here and then bring out Skarmory on the Clef, which gives me a bit of an opportunity. I decide to Brave Bird as he stays in and then a Whirlwind as he switches out. Realistically, I don't actually need to make the Whirlwind plays. I can just spam Brave Bird. But I think at this point, I don't remember. I think at this point it is revealed that my Skarmory is faster, so I could have just spammed Brave Bird.
Yeah.
But I like flex with a Whirlwind for no real reason. But it does mean I get some extra chip here.
Yeah. And you do reveal
and it means he doesn't
too as well. So
it means he doesn't get Gliscor in, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like his Gliscor is just a free Gliscor for me, so not a big deal.
Yeah.
I go Clef on his Latias, he doubles in Gliscor, but I'm okay with trading Earthquake for Knock because I can always bring my Clef back on his Clef. Because I'm not in Seismic Toss range and I'm faster.
Yeah. So yeah, you can always just bring it. You can always just bring in your Clef instantly and heal, right? Basically, because you're gonna set up I assume to bring your Clef in, you're gonna set up a situation where you're bringing it in on like knocker soft boiled or even Seismic Toss. Yeah. So it's like fine.
I end up bringing it in on a Gastro Recover. Technically, there's an argument to be made that I didn't even need to risk the crit with Clef. Like I could have just gone immediately to Gliscor on his Gliscor, which is reasonable because he wasn't gonna knock off. He was gonna Earthquake or Taunt, most likely Earthquake or switch out. And even if I get knocked off, that's not really the end of the world. It's going to happen at some point because my Gliscor is going to be my Gliscor answer.
Yeah.
And not risking crit is possibly worth it because knocking off his Gliscor isn't that valuable. So maybe an optimization, but as long as he doesn't crit me, it's okay.
Yeah, and after that trade, nothing really happens for around like 10 turns ish. Like Skarm and Clef interact with each other, Eventually he
Yeah, so
goes.
basically in this situation, I have to be cautious not to go bronze on too much because if he gets
Mhm.
to whirlwind my T-turn over and over again, his Latias can become a threat unless I get my Clef healed back. So those are kind of things I'd be cautious of. I
Yeah.
whirlwind in his Tar, which is nice. And eventually he finds a position where he can whirlwind. He gets his Skarmory on my Bronzong. He whirlwinds in my Tar. This is turn 50. This is a bit later. I've skipped through some turns.
Sure, that makes sense.
Where are you at?
Yeah. I just got the turn 50. So turn 50. Turn 50. Turn 49. He goes to his Skarmory out of Gliscor as you go to Latias, which is a good double on Kevin's part. Um, especially considering like, I guess he could have like, knocked or something. But your Latias is like very obviously Ice Beam at this point. So goes to Skarm and
I mean,
then
it could even be Dragon Pulse, but
yeah,
regardless of whether it's Dragon Pulse or Ice Beam, Skarmory is going to be getting its free whirlwind.
yeah.
Which he has to do because he has to try and whirlwind in my T-Tar to actually
Mhm.
pose a threat with his Latte, which is his win condition at this point.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I go Bronzong because I feel like I go Bronzong on Latias because it's just the safest option with my Cleflower, and even if he doubles the Skarmory and gets a whirlwind off, I'm still healthy enough in my Tar that it's not really the end of the world.
Couple turns
It's kind of
later.
the consequence of Clef getting lower earlier, so maybe I should have avoided that Earthquake because it could have helped me avoid having to go Zong on the Latte, which could have helped me avoid having to get whirlwinded in with Tar. However, that ends up being pretty favorable for me, as you'll see on turn 54.
Yeah, turn 53, your target's whirled in, and it's revealed Fire Blast Scarftar, which is first of all, it's pretty good here. Second of all, it burns the Skarm, which means that Kevin can't
Burn
even
is
like. Yeah,
brutal. Yeah,
burn
it's
means
basically game over.
yeah, burn means it dies to Rocks plus burn on switch it next time it comes in, right? So it's like, or does burn it? Does that
Yeah.
happen in Gen 4?
Yeah, it does.
You take burn at end of turn. Okay, yes, when on switch in.
Well,
Or
not
on
not
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 on.
if you bring it in
I mean
after
off a
like a
sack is
sack,
what I mean.
but
Yeah. Okay.
no,
So,
okay, you can bring, but 13% might actually be within range of rocks. It depends.
yeah, because you can't
Showdown
tell from
rounding.
your side, but Kevin can tell from his side. So it might be he might be in range of rocks now, but basically this means his Skarm
But
is down.
regardless, his Skarmory is
Yeah.
completely out of the picture,
Which
which
basically
means
means you can control when your tar takes spikes now, which means that like
his
yeah.
his Latias isn't going to win the game.
Yes.
Not to mention it's just like all that PP is just out of the picture because he immediately gets burned. My Gliscor is always going to be a huge threat, but now he can't even pressure my T-Tar efficiently.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So he goes to Gastro and like like you just go
I
to
mean, the Fire Blast on the Brave Bird was always good for me because it always weakened the Skarmory a lot, and
yeah,
it
of course, of
always
course. I
meant
mean,
that it was very hard for him to pressure my Tar in the short
yeah,
term,
because
and I could always heal
even
back
then, like
Clef to prevent
even
that.
without the burn, I think Kevin was still taking the same line, right? So it would have just been at 30% and living versus at like dead,
Yeah, it definitely sucks for him, but well, one of the reasons it actually sucks for him is because it means he can't go Skarmory on my Bronzong, so I can just poison his Gastrodon and take sleep again, which then I can go free Clef on recover and heal back up, and now the game is just over.
Yeah. Yeah. So you do a little bit of chip to Gaster, but at this point, it's gonna be held like at this point, and yeah. So
And then turn 77, I get an Ice Fang freeze on his Gliscor. Well, I'm revealed to be Ice Fang. It's the very first Ice Fang that I throw out, just immediately freezes him. But the fact that I'm Ice Fang on its own makes this matchup really hard from this position. But of course, the fact that it freezes also just means that he can't play the game anymore.
yeah, like
I go Clef on Ice Beam so I can Encore him and stop him from recovering. And don't risk the
then
Gliscor, and then it's just over.
yeah, and that wraps the game up. I'll let the replay
And
play out. I have a few turns to get there still. I'll let the replay play out, but
that's how I won the Invitational.
yeah. So are there any like general takeaways you have from this event? Like I know, like going through these types of events, I know are always that they're always the types of things that cause like I'm sure there were things that changed like quite a bit like throughout the tournament. I'm sure a lot of it happened to you, right? Like I'm sure you thought you learned some things about like or you used things that you never expected to actually use that were cool, or you started thinking things were worse over the course of the tournament. Anything like that?
Right, as far as like metagame
Yeah, yeah.
takeaways.
Or even just like personal like gameplay takeaways. Like, is there anything that you feel like you improved on throughout the tournament?
Right. So I was obviously very lucky in this tournament. One thing
Mhm.
that was pretty cool, I think. But no, as far as well, as far as playing goes, I guess first of all, I kind of struggled a bit with nerves quite a bit during, especially the M Dragon and Tricking series.
Mhm.
I think I was a little bit better about that versus BKC once it got to that point. Obviously, the initial set you saw my replay whereas at like 10 seconds the entire game, I was obviously, desperately trying to stay alive that game. But as the tournament went on, I did feel a bit more comfortable compared to. I felt like I was blundering every other turn versus M-Dragon and tricking. So aside from just getting a bit more comfortable playing in games where I guess there's like stakes, or I guess where I'm like heavily invested. The other thing is, I guess I felt kind of vindicated because I didn't really go outside of my comfort zone in terms of team choices. I don't know if vindicated is the right word to use, but like I just kind of used what I felt was good and comfortable, and it worked.
And
so
you felt like you felt like because of that, like you kind of like proved that your team choice is like valid with that. I feel like that's something a lot of people can struggle with, is like thinking like the teams that they use aren't like quite like what they should be using, like using,
well,
like,
it's just, how do I put it? There's like a lot of very different opinions as far as like the best way to approach DPP, and I don't know what the best way to approach DPP is, but I at least know that how I like to approach it works. You can bring your mixed offenses and your boring stalls, and it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that, I guess. Is the nice thing.
Sure. I feel like funny enough, I feel like BKC is kind of an example of that as well. Like, just look at, like, it's funny that you two played in finals, because I feel like Kevin is also a very like keep it simple kind of player, or
leaving Stefan Foley, but no,
well,
he definitely,
until he does that, yeah. I'm thinking more about his SPL season, but yeah,
he dances to his own beat, right?
Yeah,
like he
sticks to his own, like he sticks to what he knows basically as well, and he's
yeah, exactly, and he makes it win.
Yeah, I mean, you did the exact same, so props to you for that.
Yeah, thanks.
I think in this tournament there were also a couple. It's kind of funny because I feel like I feel like the three of the people that a lot of people were thinking of were like not going to do particularly well in this event. It was you, it was the Student of Sinnoh, and it was Ladon, right? Were the three that were like, yeah, these people, like, they're not, like, you guys obviously deserve to be invited, but you weren't like quite at the level of some of the other players. I think a lot of people predicted I
think Student of Sinnoh had a bit of a different level of hype because he'd be coming off of a 4 SBL. So I think there were definitely some people who appreciated that, clearly he's got a good feel for the tier.
Sure, but
obviously there were doubts as to like whether he'd be able to, cope with the format and the tilt and whatnot. But
yeah, of course,
he definitely did. I think maybe Oipon struggled a bit more with that, but Student of Sinnoh did really well, and I think Ladon had a really good run as well. So
yeah. I mean, I still feel like a lot of people view one tournament as like, okay, like that's a good starting point, but you have to build off it. And Student of Sinnoh did a great job building off it. He had a great run. And Ladon had actually lost round 1 and managed to go even further than Student of Sinnoh. I believe he made top 6. He lost to correct, yeah. He lost to M-Dragon in winners and then beat M-Dragon in the run back and losers on his way to top 6.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean, he had a very excellent run, so shout outs to him. But yeah, other than that, do you have anything in closing that you'd like to say?
Not really. I mean, it was just a really cool tournament. I'm glad to have been invited. I mean, obviously, shout outs to Jirachi for hosting the whole thing, and thanks to all the donors for giving me money. No, for making it, actually something that was really exciting and people could get invested in. So that was cool.
Of course. I feel like these types of tournaments are nothing without the people that donate to them, right? Because even like this, I feel like obviously there's going to be stakes put on it, but it just makes like the pressure to perform and to actually take it very seriously like that much higher, right? So,
and it just it makes the high profile names more likely to get involved,
Yeah, of course. I mean, if they think they can get in and they can get in and flex their, like, even if they don't, they can get in and they can flex their way to a top 3-4 finish, maybe get a little cash out of it. But yeah, so I think
BKC did exactly that. So.
He did, yeah, it's true. But I think it's very cool that a dedicated DPP mainer was one to take down the whole thing. So congratulations, man.
Thanks. I think that's a decent place to end the video, though. I don't have too much to talk about.
No, I mean, that's what I was gonna do. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Not that sudden. Come on, I gotta do an outro at least.
Oh, you got an outro? Yeah. I think that was a good outro.
I mean, I can do an outro right now if you want. I'll do an outro. Fuck it. We already spent too long talking about it. But yeah, so anyway, I know this is kind of a weird video for my channel, but yeah, Finn is one of my good friends, and I was really proud of his run, and I was really happy to see him perform at the level that he did. So yeah, congrats on getting drafted next SPL, buddy.
I guess that's thanks, yeah.
You managed to dodge the bigs this time. Let's see if you can do it again.
dodged all this time.
Well, yeah, but specifically the bigs. You know.
I see.
But yeah, I will see you all soon. Probably not with Finn, but maybe. All right, goodbye.